Good morning and welcome. This is American Vineyard Live. We are joined this morning by Professor Larry Williams, Professor Emeritus, and Cassie Braswell of Hotspot Ag to discuss some of the best strategies for irrigating this growing season. Conditions change every year, and we are grateful for you two joining us this morning here in the studio. Couple of quick announcements before we get started. I do want to recognize our title sponsor this morning, Hotspot Ag. Thank you so very much for your support. They are responsible for making this event possible. So a big shout out to them. Thank you to their team. We will have two prize winners announced at the end of the webcast. You must be present to win. So thanks for joining us. This morning's prizes are a brand new Baco pruning tool set, generously provided by Baco Pruning Tools, or a $100 Amazon gift card. If you'd like to ask our panelists any questions, feel free to text the number at the bottom of this window. We will try to answer as many questions as we can during the last few minutes of the meeting. As this is a monthly event, make sure to mark your calendars for next month's broadcast, all about soil health in your vineyard, on May 9th at 10 a.m. Once again, that's all about soil health in your vineyard, May 9th at 10 a.m. Same link. There will be prizes to win and a great panel just like this one today. And without further ado, let's get started. I'll go ahead and introduce our panelists at this time and we'll jump into the conversation. So Cassie Braswell, to my right here, a Visalia native, built a dynamic career blending business technology and agriculture. Her passion for water conservation led her to a customer service leadership role at an irrigation wholesaler, where she guided Bay Area clients through drought challenges. In 2022, Cassie joined Hotspot Ag as North Coast Customer Success Manager, merging her expertise in the wine industry with cutting-edge ag technology solutions. Dedicated to sustainable water management, she stays ahead of SGMA regulations and grant funding opportunities for farmers. Thanks for joining us, Cassie.
Thank you for having me.
Larry Williams, also to my right here, is well recognized by the grape industry for his remarkable work in irrigation and fertilizer management as a professor and plant physiologist in the Department of Viticulture and Enology at UC Davis. Stationed at the Kearney Ag Research and Extension Center in the Central Valley, Williams helped growers determine nitrogen and potassium needs for all grape types and application timing. His research guided wine grape growers to refine deficit irrigation practices for improved wine quality and help raisin and table grape growers understand water needs to maximize berry size and production. His pioneering work in the field has been verified and accepted around the world and underpinned ongoing technological developments that are making it easier than ever for growers to save water while optimizing yield and quality. Larry was recognized by the San Joaquin Valley Wine Growers Association with their Lifetime Achievement Award at the Grape Nut and Tree Fruit Expo last November. Larry retired in June of 2018, but his work continues to bear much fruit. So, Larry, now that you're retired, what are you doing these days?
Just trying to keep busy. Watching my children this coming week.
Oh,
We're in
fantastic.
the Central Coast. So, and I'm trying to write up all the research that I haven't written up before. So, keeping busy.
On the to-do list. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Larry.
Yes.
Now, let's jump right into the conversation if we could. But first, tell us a little bit about yourselves. Cassie, why don't you go first? How did you get involved in agriculture? And tell us a little bit what excites you most about your work.
Oh, great question. Yes, so as Hiram mentioned, I am born and raised from the Central Valley, right in Visalia, California. My grandfather was a Thompson seedless grape grower in Exeter. He had about 50 acres or so, and that's long gone now, but my aunt and uncle also farmed in Lindsay area, about 18 acres of citrus. So that was kind of my introduction into agriculture. Of course, living in Tulare County is the breadbasket of the world. You're always immersed in one way or another. But I left the area and had an opportunity to fall in love with Sonoma County and pursued my education there at Sonoma State, graduated with a bachelor's in fine art, and started working in the wine industry, more so on the direct-to-consumer sales and operations side. We serviced about 40 different winery accounts. And that's where I really discovered a passion for the wine industry and the art and the science of winemaking. Had a little introduction into the vineyard practices and some biodiversity that was going on at the time that kind of led into the regenerative farming practices that we are in today. So after that, I had an opportunity to go back to school, got my master's in business administration, graduating with honors, and then, like you said, started with an irrigation wholesaler in the Bay Area, which was brings us to about 2017 during some heavy drought times, working with property owners to discover opportunities to save on water consumption, water use, and there were some grant funding opportunities that we took advantage of at the time, and so really had a new invigorated interest in water conservation. So when Hotspot called in 2022, it sounded like just the perfect match. I could blend my interest in the wine industry, the agricultural practices, water conservation, and technology has always been something that's been very interesting to me ever since my statistics class in my master's program. Going into the data and really understanding, how it makes a difference is kind of where we are today. And to answer your question about what excites me the most, I mean, I'm a forever learner. So every time I have the opportunity to meet with growers and understand their challenges and their practices and learn about, the farming practices and techniques. And so just there's so much to know, and I'm getting into ag and just loving it.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Larry, how about you?
Hi there. I was born and raised on a farm in Iowa. I got a BS degree in biology from Central College in Iowa. I spent 2 years in the Army. I got drafted. I got a PhD from the University of Iowa, and I studied photosynthesis in corn. I did a postdoc in UC Davis, and I studied nitrogen fixation in soybeans. I was a professor at the agronomy department at the Louisiana State University, and I did research on rice. So that made perfect sense for me to be hired and work on a perennial crop such as grapevines. And I was a professor at UC Davis from 1984 until 2018. I lived in the Fresno Clovis area, and I actually taught on the Davis campus for 30 years. And I commute up there in the fall quarter and teach classes on introduction to viticulture, raisin and table grape production, and grapevine and grape pests and diseases. My research interests include irrigation and fertilization, and also grapevine physiology. I've conducted my research, especially my irrigation research, throughout the state of California, which this slide shows, and highlighted in red there are individual research plots that I had across those years. I was located primarily at the Kearney Ag Center near southeast of Fresno, California. I published more than 100 papers in peer-reviewed journals, and I continue to write up my research now. So, big things that I think was important here, as in 1986, we decided at the Kearney Ag Center to install something called a weighing lysimeter. And a weighing lysimeter will provide you with a direct measurement of grapevine water use, or ET. So there's a large soil tank that weighs 20 metric tons. It sits on a scale, and we got resolutions of 0.25 millimeters of water with that thing. And what we see here is a picture of the two grapevines in the lysimeter. We have access tubes underneath the drip emitters. And what you can see in this picture is there's shade on the floor of the vineyard. And someone once suggested, well, is that shade related to anything? And so we did some work. And what we found is that the percent shaded area, the water use is a linear relationship with percent shaded area. And in addition, we found that the crop coefficient was linearly related to the percent shaded area. So if you know what the slope of the equation is, you can say if you can measure shaded area in your vineyard, you can come up with a crop coefficient. And again, what we find is that as the canopy develops during the season, vineyard water use increases. No, everybody should know that. As the trellis width increases, the amount of canopy intercepting light increases, therefore water use increases. The closer the row spacing, the greater the water use per unit area. So again, all these things affect grapevine water use. Unfortunately, most people have not looked at those types of things in the past. So again, crop coefficients were developed by measuring percent shaded area across vineyards, having different row spacings and trellis and grape types here in California. Other vineyard metrics that I've developed was determining the relationship between vine water status measurements and leaf water potential, canopy temperature, and a few others, and their relationships with volumetric soil water content. So if you can't measure soil water content, you can also measure the plant itself. I determine what values of water status represent a non-stress vine. Again, you have to have a non-stress baseline to determine if you want to deficit irrigate. We determine what fraction of full ET will optimize berry size and possibly fruit quality and also yield. I've determined the amount of nitrogen and potassium removed in 1 ton of fruit across cultivars and when is the best time to apply nitrogen fertilizer. And I've also demonstrated that leaf removal in the fruiting zone increases the color of berries across irrigation treatment. So you can actually apply a little bit more water than you had in the past if you do some leaf removal, and you'll get better quality. Lastly, I've developed some nitrogen and potassium budgets for grapevines. I've used a backhoe to remove roots from the vineyard. And in this particular slide, grapevine roots were excavated to various steps. Here we're 2 meters deep and midway between vines and rows. And again, this photo was taken at the Kearney Agricultural Center. Most people who have developed nitrogen and potassium budgets for grapevines have not looked at how much is actually partitioned down into the root system. And lastly, this is just a slide showing vines that were drip irrigated on the left and were furrow irrigated or flood irrigated on the right, just showing you what happens when you drip irrigate versus your flood irrigate. So again, with that, that gives me a background of what I've done in the past, and I'll be ready to go on now.
Yeah, no, thank you, Larry. Yeah, we have a powerhouse panel here. We got a lot of research-backed information that we'll be going through. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I guess just to get started, I think it'd be interesting to ask, what are some of the most common mistakes that you see being made in vineyards throughout California that just has the easiest fix? What is something that you always that you're always sharing and makes at least a small and immediate difference with our growers' operations? Cassie, why don't you go first?
I would have to say that distribution uniformity is a big one, especially on the North Coast where I'm based out of, Napa, Sonoma. There's a lot of change in elevation, and it's difficult to make sure that everything is irrigated equally as you would expect it to be. So fortunately, the RCDs, the Resource Conservation Districts, have resources available for growers. They'll come out, they'll bring their equipment, they'll show you how to do a DU test. And they want to help empower the growers, the irrigators, the teams to learn how to do this themselves so that they can replicate that testing in other areas of their vineyard so that they can ensure that, you know, we're meeting those distribution uniformity goals.
Excellent. Thanks, Cassie. Larry?
Well, I'm of the opinion that the biggest deficit that grape growers have is that they don't know how much water they have applied. You need to have a background of how much water you apply. You need to have a background in how much water your grapevines actually use as a function of phenology, whether between bud break and bloom and veraison and harvest time. So again, and you need to keep records of this information. And so again, I'm of the opinion that with regards to vineyard irrigation, the lack of knowledge of what you've applied and how much is actually full ET in your vineyard would assist you in providing better estimates of grapevine water use.
Yeah. So what are some of the, with, you know, that said, what are some of the, you know, quickest and easiest resolutions there? I mean, what are some of your recommendations on that?
Well, you would put a water meter in your vineyard either at the pump, and I'm pretty sure there's water meters at pumps.
Mhm.
You can make sure you quantify how long your pump is run, and you need to make sure the uniformity of the water being applied is high. And so again, or you can also put water meters down the row. Now I have some information here with regards to irrigation scheduling, and the question is, how much water does rainfall contribute to the water use of your vineyard? And in the past, most people have assumed, researchers have assumed, that about 50% of the water that falls is effective. It'll remain in your particular vineyard. And so the question is, do people know how to do this? And there is one way to come up with the effective rainfall, and that is by taking the rainfall amount, subtracting 0.25 if you're recording in inches, and multiply that by 0.8. And again, this is one means of determining that. And I tried to come up with, I measured water in the soil profile. This is, are they seeing this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. This is rainfall during the year from 1990 to 1994. This is the amount of water that remained in the soil after that period of time. And on the right-hand side there is the calculated effective rainfall from that equation I just gave you. What this indicates is that if you get less than a quarter of an inch of rain, there is no effective rainfall there. Even if you get like a half an inch of rain, the effective rainfall is very minimal. And so let's say from 1994 to 1995, we got almost 18 inches here in Fresno. The effective rainfall was only 7 inches. So that was only about 40%, even in a lot of rainfall per particular year. But if you use that equation, you can calculate effective rainfall. And then what you can then do is that enough water being held in your soil to maintain your vines for some certain period of time? And again, this is a California Sustainable Wine Growing Alliance. You can't manage what you don't measure. And again, what I've done is the metrics of this is the water meter I would put in a drip line, and I had them in each one of my vineyards that I've conducted research in. But the metrics of irrigation is you need to know what ET of your vineyard might be. And if you don't have an idea of that before you plant, then you may be not having enough water for you. You also need to know what water use is for your vineyard as a function of phenology. Again, you need to install water meters at the pump or down rows. You make sure your drip irrigation, as Cassie said, should be well maintained, and you can get metrics for that. You need to use a means to assess soil water or water status of the vines. And again, if you have to apply water for frost protection, you need to record that. So again, how much water is used by vine as a function of phenology. This is between bud break and bloom in this particular slide. This is a function of phenology for non-stressed vines. You only need about 10% of the water for the entire season between bud break and bloom. Between bud break and veraison, for the white cultivars here, about 40%. For the reds, for Merlot and red cultivars, we need about 50%. So again, if you know how much water you might need for those particular situations, you can then calculate, well, I can delay irrigating the vineyards until sometime later in the spring. Now, I do also have it for Cabernet in Oakville up in Napa and in Paso Robles for Cabernet. And again, between bud break and bloom, we're using about 18% for Cabernet Sauvignon. And then it's a little bit higher between bud break and veraison here at about 59%. So again, by knowing this thing here, knowing how much season total would be, if you need 40 inches and you only need need 10% of that between bud break and bloom, then the water and the soil profile may be sufficient to carry you through bloom time. So this is the type of information that growers, I think, should be able to find it somewhere in the literature and then irrigate according to that particular situation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And so would you say that of the most important points covered there, I mean, it sounds like knowledge is power,
That's correct.
right?
Yes.
Knowing what you're applying, knowing where it's going, knowing what effective rainfall you've had
That's right.
is probably the most important
Yes.
part.
I mean, one thing would be having a rain gauge there, or one thing to having a weather station located very close to where your property is located so that you can have a good measure of rainfall, and then you can calculate effective rainfall from that point.
It's hard. I mean, that's a lot to all of the different data points to jot down and, from block to block. And so, I mean, yeah, irrigating is not easy. It's a challenge. It's a lot to take into consideration. You've got the practical side of it. How am I going to execute a schedule? You've got the scientific side of it of, what is the soil holding capacity? What do the vines need? What are they actually taking up? What rainfall did we get? I think you said from 90 to 95, there were 18 inches
Yeah.
here. In November of last year, I think we had a week, 5 days where we had 18 inches. So, I don't know.
Up in Napa.
Up in
Napa.
Napa,
Yes.
yeah, quite a difference in, regionally aspects. So, it's a lot to take in. You think about the soil, the vine, you know, then once you come up with the irrigation schedule, how can you execute it? Do you have the right pump capacity? Do you have the right water availability? Do you have, a team that can go out there and open the valves and close the valves and turn on the pump and turn off the pump? Is all that manageable? And so that's where, Hotspot, the technology really comes into play and collects all of the data so that you can see, what actually happened. Did it go as we had planned? Was it effective? If it was, can we replicate this? Can we continue to do this successfully?
Mhm.
So that's something that's been really great with the evolution of technology. You're not necessarily jotting down all those points, but it's doing it for you so that you can
Right.
focus on
That's
everything
correct.
else.
That's a very good point. Just to give an example here, I had a trial up in the North Coast, and I wanted them for the week to apply 8 hours worth of water. And I went up there and I checked my water meters, and of course, it was 24 hours and not 8.
Oh
So
my.
by having a check out there in the vineyard that lets you know how much has been applied is very good. Just putting 1 meter per vineyard, if that's all you need to allow you to do that, would be sufficient.
And maybe this is a good time for me to share our scheduler to see how easy it is just to click and drag and drop. If that's
Sure.
something that
Yeah.
can be
Let's
shared
do it.
on the screen. So here we're looking at the Hotspot dashboard. You can see that we've got an irrigation recommendation up in the widget above, and we've got 3 blocks over here, 3 valves that we're going to open. So if you wanted to schedule an irrigation set, let's say we want to do this in a pulse irrigation, it's just a matter of clicking and dragging. And we've got about 1/10 of an inch going out to block C. We've got, looks like just a little under 1/10 of an inch here at block B, and about half of a 1/10 of an inch at block A. And so we're going to schedule the pump to turn on during that time. And it's just as easy as that. If you wanted to copy and paste this into, let's say, tomorrow and even over the weekend, we'll submit and see that that has been scheduled. One of the greatest things about this software, additionally, is that it was identified that along with all of the other data points, it's a conversion issue is a big challenge. So the calculations and having different departments, different team members thinking in terms of, are we going to apply hours per vine? Are we going to apply gallons per vine? Are we going to apply, at the end of the year, looking how much did we apply, acre inches um, per time period? So the software takes the irrigation design and calculates all of that. So it's just one less thing that you have to worry about. And with that information, we can actually look and see, was it successful? Did we have a mainline break? Did we apply more than we needed? So by monitoring the pressures at the manifold and the flow at the pump station, we can get that data calculated and export this into a CSV file if it helps, or export it into another platform if that would help.
Yeah, so really in this case, this is a great way for our growers to automate their irrigation practices, but also know what happened, actually get measurable results back. That's fantastic. Oh, that's thank you so much. And I guess that leads us right into our next question here about some of the smartest strategies for saving on water. I'm curious to know. Um, we've had our ups and downs with effective rainfall, right? And we've also had our ups and downs with the amount of water that we're allowed to use. So water savings is that's seems to be one of the most important points. Is how can we water our vineyards while not breaking the bank with our pumps and not also or not also overwatering, um, giving them what they need without watering too much. What are some of the technological strategies that we can apply? Obviously, there's the data side and the automation side, but I'm curious, what other technologies have we seen that are on the market today that we could use to improve our efficiency?
I mean, another thing that with the automation, we're able to run pumps outside of peak energy use hours. So,
Hmm.
if you think about if we're like in Larry's situation where he was monitoring what actually went out and found out it was 24 hours instead of 8 hours, um, we are able to schedule pumps to turn off, schedule pumps to turn on so that we're operating outside of peak energy use hours. Someone told me the other day that the PG&E rates went up 50% since last year, and they just keep continuing to go up.
Hmm.
So, it's a lot of people don't think about when we're wasting water, we're wasting energy, which is a huge expense. The biggest expense when it comes to irrigation costs is the energy costs. So, yeah, operating outside of peak energy use hours is a huge benefit. You don't have to, with the new labor laws that have gone into play, farm managers are now required to pay overtime for, hours over 40 hours a week.
Hmm.
And so having someone come back later in the day to turn off a pump is going to cost more than it used to. And it's another way to save on costs.
Hmm. Oh, thank you, Cassie.
Well, one other thing would be is trying to reduce evaporation in the soil when you apply water. And what we did with the lysimeter is we covered the lysimeter with plastic, as is seen in this particular slide here. We also measured sap flow and what percentage VT was soil evaporation. What we found is that 11% of the soil, grape water use was reduced 11% when the soil was covered with plastic compared to bare soil. So right there's the possibility of saving 10%. So what other means would there be useful? Um, excuse me. Like Cassie said, if you can pulse irrigate, so you don't have water running over the top of the soil, where it's going to be evaporated there. To further minimize soil evaporation, you can change the rate and duration and frequency of your irrigation. And also, there are some people I know that have installed below ground drip irrigation. And again, it may also reduce soil evaporation for vineyards that people have done research on this.
Hmm.
So again, that would be one means of minimizing the amount of water that is evaporated. Again, that evaporated is not useful for the vine.
Yeah, one of the questions that we got, and by the way, we did. If you didn't know, we did have uh, the opportunity for some of our viewers to submit questions in advance, and a couple of the recurring questions were around irrigation timing. And that's one of the great strategies of saving water, right? Is getting your irrigation timing right. What time of the year are we supposed to start? What are some of the tells that says today I need to irrigate? Right, it's time to start for the season. Or maybe I shouldn't irrigate yet or don't need to yet. What can you share about that?
Well, with I feel like it's we're kind of building up. So now we're in the point of starting the season, and going back a few months, we were wrapping up the season, and it was post harvest, and things were winding down, and we kind of all just take a breath because harvest is an intense time in agriculture, and now that we're getting ready and gearing up for things, it's getting back in the motion and thinking about what happened last year, and how did that go, and so having the historical data on hand, easily accessible, is really important so that it allows you the opportunity to know and not have to go back through records. It's all accessible. Um, and so for starting the season, having the weather data, looking back at the records, and what rainfall did we get. Monitoring soil is a big part of it. Checking the soil moisture monitors and seeing, okay, we had rain. How much of an impact? How far down did that go? What is the current soil moisture status? I think that's a good place to start in terms of knowing, when it's time to irrigate.
So being out in your vineyard, really, I mean,
Well, you can't
that's
keep away from
sure,
being
sure.
out in the vineyard, but I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
also, having the data accessible on your phone or
Mhm.
tablet,
Yeah,
anywhere you go, it'll be there whether you're in the vineyard or on the road or wherever you are.
sure. Yeah.
So again, this is a short presentation on what information is needed to determine to start irrigating. So you're going to want to look at the depletion of water in the soil profile. We have those soil moisture terms that I just gave you here. And the measurement of soil moisture, there are various means: tensiometers, gravimetric, neutron probe, capacitance sensors, and time domain reflectometer are all used to measure soil volumetric water content. And all the research I've done in past years, I've always used a neutron probe. But people are getting away from neutron probe since it is radioactive, and have to have get a permit to use it. So again, probably the volumetric soil water content can be measured with capacitance sensors and TDR. This is just a tensiometer here. This is a watermark. Do you use watermarks, Cassie?
I'm not. I don't believe so.
I know a lot of people that I've done research with have used watermarks. This is the neutron probe. This is a neutron probe sitting in a vineyard somewhere. And this is a capacitance sensor. This is the Centec or who else makes them?
AquaCheck and ViroScan, I think, is one of them.
Okay. So again, what you do is you put these tubes down in the ground and you leave them there, and they're monitoring them 24/7, and you can download that information at any time. This is time domain reflectometry. It is another dielectric sensor measuring volumetric water content in the soil. So we have all these things. They all will give you reasonable values of what you need to do. So where should one place access tubes, tensiometers, or other devices to measure soil water content? Well, in the lysimeter, we had 2 access tubes located in the middle, right under the drip irrigation line. And what happens is, you can see with depth here, the greatest change you get in soil water content is at the highest level. And then as you go down in the soil profile down to 1.37 meters, there's less change that happens. So again, this is the type of information you might get with your capacitance sensors. This shows the relationship between ET and reference ET. Generally speaking, your grapevine water use will start decreasing, generally speaking, after you dip below field capacity. So again, a lot of people assume that field capacity, you can go down even further and not affect. But again, as soon as my data indicates you can start irrigating. So the question is, where do you put your access tubes? I had a study where I put access tubes in the vine row, between the vine row, and midway between vines. And I thought, there's going to be one tube at one level that's going to give me the mean value of all of them. And sure enough, there was not. So what this means is that you're going to have to decide to put it somewhere. You do not want to put your access tubes out in the middle of the road because people driving tractors will take care of them. How deep in the soil profile do grapevines use water? In the study at the Kerniak Center and also up in Napa, we get water being depleted down to 10 feet. So if you only have something that goes down, let's say 4 to 5 feet, you may be missing the water that's going to ultimately be used by the grapevines. And again, this is up in Napa, in the Carneros region. So again, we measure water down to 10 feet, and water is being depleted up down to that particular period. So lastly, on the comments on root distribution and measured soil water content, the majority of roots are located in the top 1 meter of the soil profile, 1 meter out from the vine into the middle of the row. Soil water is depleted in the deficit irrigation to a depth of 3 meters and out to the middle of the row. That's 10 feet out to the middle of the row. No one access tube or particular depth was representative of the mean soil water content of all 9 access tubes. So if you're going to put in something to measure soil water content, it's going to be put in the row, and you probably want to put it not directly under an emitter, but off to the side. And again, by doing such, you should be able to come up with some very reasonable data if you continue to monitor it year after year.
Yeah, thanks so much, Larry. We're actually going to take an opportunity here to take a quick break. I'm gonna ask for our production team to throw up the Hotspot Ag video. They got a 30-second snippet they're going to show here. Thanks so much, Hotspot Ag, for sponsoring this event.
Regarding the soil moisture monitoring, that is certainly a question that we often get asked about. How many do I need? How many should I put out in my vineyard? And the question is often answered with however many irrigation decisions that you're going to make. So that's kind of a basic guideline. Of course, it'd be great to have 1 per acre, but that doesn't really seem very cost effective. So if you can have 1 per irrigation zone, that allows you to make those decisions and monitor how it's affecting the soil.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, and so you said you get that question a lot, right? And so what can growers do to access? Well, where should they go for answers to this? I mean, they should come here, right? But with American Vineyard. But what are some other important information resources do they have?
Great question. Yeah, I mean, we have a great website with lots of good testimonials and blogs that have a lot of good information on pumping efficiency and ROI. We just had a recent customer, Mortson, did a great blog on ROI returns. So definitely something to check out. But there is another great free resource. Quick solution would be the Web Soil Survey. It's a website that's provided by the USDA. I've got it up on my screen now if anybody wants to share it. But this gives you a lot of great information. You can dial right into your vineyard, see what the soil type is, throughout the property. You can look at the permanent wilting point, the saturation rate, field capacity rates, so you get some good information to help manage your irrigation decisions.
And that's, like you said, that's a free tool.
It is.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Larry, there's a lot of questions as well around irrigation timing, but with respect to watering on deficit. Last year was a fun year with respect to irrigation. What can we do now moving into 2025 to, maybe the word is recover? Start watering normally again. Our allocations are a little bit better, and looks like we do have some effective rainfall this over winter. What can you share about that?
You can deficit irrigate your vines. And we've done a couple of studies at the Kearney Ag Center in which this was back in 2012 to 2016. And in one of those years, we had the least amount of rainfall that ever happened in Fresno. And so we decided, if you aren't going to have water available, what are the best options for you? So the first one was, well, you don't irrigate to start with, and you allow your vines to struggle along, and then after veraison, you then irrigate it again. We had one where we irrigated early season. So a grower says, I'm going to have water available. Let's irrigate what we can. So we irrigated those vines at 100% of ET. And then we cut them off at veraison. And then we had another set of vines that we just irrigated at 50% of ET. And so again, what you needed was to know what ET was to be able to apply that amount of water. What we found is that, and we also looked at carryover effects, is that not applying water early in the season was the worst case. What you want to do, the next best thing was applying water at 50% of ET, and the best thing was applying at 100% of ET until veraison, and then no water after that. So again, if those people are interested, is if you want smaller berries, don't water early in the season, and you'll get smaller berries.
So the foundation of initial watering is more important than later.
That
Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you may not have water later on, put water on before, if you got it. And if they cut it off, then you let your vines survive if you can, or you pump water from the ground if you can.
Yeah, and so cutting off water post veraison won't necessarily have as much an effect on yield as cutting the water off pre veraison.
That's correct.
Okay.
So again, we reduce yield by cutting the water off by no applied water until veraison. We reduce yield, smaller berries, but then we also reduce yield the following year by less flower cluster primordia. So you had less clusters the next year by not irrigating early in the season and then later on. But again, these irrigation treatments we had may not be what a grower would use. I don't think there'd be a grower that would not apply water prior to veraison. They may apply, even when we applied at 50%, it did very well. And we could probably even cut back to 40% where it might do just as well. And I would say, put water on if you can early in the season. If you have to cut off after veraison, I don't think it's going to be that bad with regards to berry size. And actually, it might even increase quality.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, thank you. And I want to actually, if we could, we've talked a little bit about irrigation timing. And Cassie actually touched on a point earlier. Another significant portion of our questions was around distribution uniformity. And I'm wondering if we could skip back to that as well. Talk a little bit about some of the strategies that we can employ to improve that uniformity. One particular question, and I'm sure that many of our growers are dealing with this issue, is watering on slope. So what are some of the strategies that we can employ to improve our practices while watering on slope?
Yeah, we do have a lot of that going on. Change of elevation. That's where, when I showed the application rate analysis, the widgets that we call them, you can see what actually went out and kind of use that to enhance your DU. It's tricky when you're on a slope. Breaking that into different irrigation zones might be the solution. There are pressure regulating tools that you can apply that might also provide some help. Having someone from the RCD come out and do an irrigation system evaluation could be an opportunity. There are some technical funding available for them to come out and do so. Sometimes it's limited, so you want to make sure that you're jumping up on those opportunities. And That's a fun challenge to have. It's makes for great wine, but it
Yeah,
can be
yeah.
tough to
Oh,
get
and
there.
beautiful vineyards too, right? Yeah.
And jumping back to Larry's point about, I mean, tough decisions to make. When do you, if you have a limited amount, and that's what we're here to talk about today,
Mhm.
is how to manage the limited resources available. If you're applying early on to help, reduce the limitation of yield later. And then what happens if you have a heat spike? We get, like in 2022, we had record high temperatures, 117 degrees in Napa. And, for the folks that had the automation and they could act in the moment, respond, turn on the pump, open the valves immediately to get the water out, they fared a little bit better than some of the growers that maybe didn't have that ability, didn't foresee this unexpected event, and lost, in some cases, 30% of their yield that year. So yeah, it's challenging to make those decisions, and to be able to act in real time is another opportunity where the technology is able to support growers.
Mhm. Larry?
Um, I agree with much of what Cassie has said. Um, I am not a grape grower myself, although I've done experiments in vineyards. I know some table grape growers put a lot of water on their vines. Um, they have the water, they were able to pump it. Um, I think they probably would be better with not being able to apply as much water as I have. And I have data that indicates that um, you can actually maximize berry size and yield by applying water at 80% of full ET. So in my vineyard that I have with the lysimeter, the vines surrounding were irrigated in anywhere from 0 to 140% of ET in increments of 20%. And what we found one year was that actually some years we find berry size and yield are increased at 60% of ET when you have a lot of rainfall during the previous winter. So again, you can maximize, and if you have an idea of what vineyard ET is, then you can just apply water at some fraction of that.
Mhm.
And so again, you can save water under those conditions, and know that I've shown this both on wine grapes, table grapes, and raisin grapes. That again, irrigation between 60 and 80% of estimated ET will maximize berry size and yield.
But there's got to be a point at which the under irrigating begins. So you said between 60 and 80%.
Right.
At what point? At what point? What's a good indicator to show that maybe we should have gone 70% instead of 60? Um,
Well, I don't think that we're looking at those types of data that would indicate that, oh, if we only did 70%, we would have maximized yield. I'm of the opinion that if you calculate ET using reference ET and a crop coefficient, let's say you need for the coming week, let's just say you need 1 inch. If you apply only 0.7 or zero point 0.8 inches of water, you'd do fine. And you could probably even get less than that. And again, this would all depend on what happens with regards to evaporative demand, which is what you get when you have reference ET.
mhm.
So again, I'm of the opinion that when I had factors you need to know, you need to come up with a schedule for your vineyard, and you can base it on just estimates of what other people have done. And you can take crop coefficients and reference ET, and you can come up with a season schedule on how much you might need based on historical data. And again, this has actually proved very useful. And again, it goes back to you need to know how much water your vines may need, and you need to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I think we're unanimous on that point.
Yeah. Yeah. That knowledge is power. If there's one takeaway today,
Absolutely.
right? Knowing what's going on in your vineyard. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wow. We're getting a number of questions here about distribution uniformity. Um, uh, well, one I'd like to ask. We've talked a little bit about that already, but one grower asked the question this morning: what are the effects of water composition with regard to efficacy and physiology? Not asking about salinity, but perhaps mineral composition. or perhaps additives?
Um, so this is coming out of your irrigation water, is that correct?
Yes.
Um, at the Kearney Ag Center, the only thing we don't have a whole lot of problems with mineral content in the irrigation water, with the exception of maybe some nitrates. And again, that you can always calculate that in how much nitrogen you need to apply if that's appropriate.
Yeah, so you're saying that you haven't necessarily studied that
I have not.
exactly. Yeah, got it.
Something that's come up with our fertigation, our variable rate fertigation injection skid, that's come to my attention is that basically you want to fertigate to compensate for what your soil is lacking. So if you're irrigating with water that is heavily mineral based, has a lot of other things going into it, then your soil is going to have that. So you'd want to kind of compensate for either an overabundance or a lacking of nutrients with fertigation.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, we got a couple more questions here. Let's see. One interesting question that we got earlier was with respect to speaking of composition of water. One interesting question from a grower out in Pennsylvania. What are your thoughts on using recycled wastewater from the winery, or I suppose from other sources as well? What treatments would be needed, and are there already programs for this application?
Yeah, great question. That happens a lot up on the North Coast. We're seeing a lot of recycled water being applied. And in some cases, it's the only water source that a vineyard has. And so that can come from a city that maybe supplies it, trucks it in, or from the winery. That's another great opportunity to, be regenerative, be sustainable, use the water. It's a lot of water it takes to make a good bottle of wine. So repurposing it and using it in the vineyard as much as possible is a great opportunity. And it can cause some issues with plugging filters and some headaches there. There are water treatment that you can apply. There's a lot to put into that. Biochar, I've heard of as being a good option. I don't have all the specifics or scientifics behind that, but yeah, so that's a great way to explore. It's nice when you have multiple water sources. So whether you're diverting from a stream, whether you're capturing it in a reservoir, whether you're pulling it from the ground or using recycled water, it helps to have multiple options so that you can manage accordingly.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, pulling from whatever source we can, right, to make sure that our vineyards are getting the water that they need. Any thoughts on that, Larry?
I've had no experience with that,
Oh, got it.
so
Got it.
One other thing that I've seen come up more often in the North Coast is there's a supplier that has a like a worm farm, for lack of a better
Mhm.
term, and so the water is sent to this worm farm where the worms process the water, and then it's sent to be used for irrigating. Yeah, it's it's pretty wild, but, yeah, so and there are limitations on when you can apply, recycled water. If you've got, berry flesh, then it's not advisable, but, it's a great option if you can make it work.
Yeah, I think perhaps for good reason. That's yeah, no, fantastic. Yeah. Now, what as we're getting ready to wrap up here, we really appreciate your time, but I did want to make sure that we covered. Um, we talked about distribution uniformity this morning. We talked about the importance of knowing what's going on in your vineyard, knowing what effective rainfall uh, has um, has taken place, as well as knowing what actual watering, what actual irrigating has had an impact, as well as understanding the effects of soil composition as well. We got a couple of questions about that. I think we're well covered in that area. Now, one additional question that I want to make sure we cover as we're wrapping up. Um, do and this is from a wine grape grower down in San Diego. Asked the question: do summer cover crops compromise the establishment of young vines and vineyards. And I think one of the ways that that this applies to irrigating is, well, now there's going to be water in the middle of the row if there's cover crops during the summertime. Is this going to affect establishment?
Um, the question I would have is, like you said, is there water in the between rows? I assume the cover crop is not planted in the row. And as long as the cover crop's not planted in the row, then it should not affect the development of those grapevines. The question is, though, is if they try to keep the cover crop alive, then they're diverting water from the vines. I assume. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I assume it's a drip irrigated vineyard, and if you have a cover crop, it's not going to get the water if they just have drip lines. And so it would have been nice to know whether or not that person is going to try to keep the cover crop growing all year.
Yeah. Are they using water? Are they sacrificing water for the sake of the cover crop?
I hope they would.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Got it.
Comment.
I mean, I think it's a balance. I don't think it's a yes or no answer. It's like so many things of, there's this benefit. If we have a cover crop, we've got, live roots in the soil, and that's helping the soil have a healthy environment for, infiltration and all the other benefits of having healthy soils. If you're mowing down the cover crop, then you've got a cover for the soil so that it's got better water retention when when it heats up in the summer and the soil gets very hot, and it's if it's protected, it's a little bit better of an environment. But on the other side of the coin, if the cover crop is taking water from the young vines, then that's not going to benefit. So it's I don't have an answer, unfortunately. Sorry, I couldn't be more helpful with that. But yeah, I think taking all of those factors into consideration to make the right decision that's for your vineyard.
Mhm. Oh, thank you so much. And thank you to our audience for your active participation in today's event. I'm going to go ahead and announce our prize winners, and then we'll go into, I suppose, what we'd call closing thoughts. But I want to, first of all, like to thank once again Baco Tools for providing today's prize. I do not have it in studio with me, but we will reach out to you with the tool set shortly after the broadcast by email. So our Amazon gift card winner today is Rod, a raisin grower out in Fresno, right here. Rod, congratulations, Rod. Thank you for participating. We will reach out to you by email. And the winner of our Baco tool set is Scott, a wine grape grower over in Pennsylvania. Congratulations, Scott. We will reach out to you shortly. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating live at our event this morning. And once again, as we come to a close, what are some final thoughts and maybe some final tips as we've discussed some of the questions that we've gotten and gone over some of the talking points? What are some of your final thoughts?
I'll start off here. If you look at the slide I have up on the screen, is Thule still a part of CropX, or is it by itself? It's okay. So this is a piece of equipment that you put in your vineyard that it's able to calculate ET of your vineyard, and that equipment was initially calibrated from the lysimeter at the Kearney Ag Center, and it's called surface renewal. It's ET, and versus lysimeter, and they are really highly correlated with one another, which suggests to me that it'd be very good if you're able to put that in your vineyard. Now, one thing I have is for the Thule sensors, they measure actual evapotranspiration, water stress, and applied irrigation of your crop over a broad area. I think it's a broad area, but what I understand, it's actually only 5 acres. So whether you need to do it. The other thing that Thule also does that they have an iPhone app that tells you midday leaf water potential from pictures of your vines. That's another way you could take water status of the vine and measure it. And so again, um, this is not an advertisement for them, but it's again something that you could put in your vineyard and you could perhaps get that information. I don't know whether people are also know about something called OpenET. And what does OpenET actually measure? It just provides a satellite-based estimate of the total amount of water that's transpired from your vegetation. And the general limitation with OpenET, again, you can go online. It is it does not directly measure ET such as that you get from a Wayne lysimer. I haven't checked those things. OpenET does not represent direct measurement of ET, rather they are estimates. And that the problem is generally, if you have cloud cover, it's no good.
Mhm.
If you have rain, it's no good. So again, to me, it's just another tool that you could use. You can go online and open up an account with OpenET. Again, it's free, and it would perhaps give you a better estimate of what's going on in your vineyard. The problem there is that OpenET is going to tell you what ET of your vineyard is, and you determine how you're irrigating that vineyard. So if it shows it should be less than you think it should be, then you could perhaps irrigate more at that time.
Wow, thank you so much, Larry.
Yep.
Cassie?
I mean, I feel like we've covered a lot in terms of options, opportunities available, things to monitor and measure so that you know. So if you are looking into adding technology to help streamline your processes, just some things to keep in mind when you are looking at all of the different options available. Serviceability. So Hotspot Ag, coming from a farming operation, understands the importance of being able to service the electrical equipment, the technology that you're putting out in the elements. So if that's something that you want to do yourself, we want to help empower you to do so. If you want a technician to come out and do it, then making sure that it's serviceable if it does in fact need some maintenance. Some other things to think about if you're considering technology, growth, scalability. So it can be kind of daunting to think about going all in on fully automated system, irrigation scheduling and pump control and valve control and weather station monitoring and soil moisture monitoring, groundwater, all of the things. So maybe you want to just start with a flow meter and kind of get your feet wet. Maybe you want to come to the training center that we have in Hanford, California, and go hands-on with the equipment to see what that's like. But make sure what you're doing is scalable. So you might have a monitoring system that you love and you want to go more into it, but that's the limitation, the capacity of the service. So just another couple real quick considerations, making sure that it's Sigma compliant. So they do have requirements on how accurate the monitoring is. If you're monitoring a flow meter, it has to be within 2.5% accuracy. If you're going to be doing flow meter monitoring, you want to make sure that you can use that data to do your water reporting so that you're staying compliant. And then from an operational perspective, making sure that you can function, with overhead pruning and harvesting. If you have those equipment that you use, if you've got a solar panel out in the vines, then it's going to be, a little bit more challenging. And maybe the field crew, they're focused on getting the grape off the vine. They're not thinking about what's happening to a solar panel at that time. So making sure that a company can work with those needs as well. And if any questions come up?
I would like to respond. No, what I want to do is tell you that on my last slide that I have up on your screen, I do have an email address. And I still get email at that address. And I have papers I've published and would be able to send a copy of those interested at the above email address. So I'll send you a list of publications that I have. And if you see the publications and you would like the actual papers, I could send that to the list of the attendees of this podcast. I also have, these are scientific papers, but I also have papers that I wrote for individual groups, grower groups, showing how to irrigate and a few other things like that.
Yeah, we'll make sure everyone's contact information is available. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really enjoyed sitting and spending time with you guys and talking
Yes.
about smart irrigation strategies for 2025. Thank you so much, and thank you to our viewers this morning. Just as a quick reminder, once again, our next broadcast will take place on May 9th at 10 a.m. We'll be talking about soil health, and we'll have another great panel.
Great.
Great panel. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, guys.
Thank you for having us. Thank you to American Vineyard for
Yes.
putting this very educational.
Thanks to Malcolm Media.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Larry. Thanks, Cassie. And thank you. Have a good day.